How goes it? And welcome to, I guess what's the third edition of the Clay and Woodrow Show. Right off the top, I think Woodrow's going to be a little bit high maintenance because he today is having a spa day and is not even in studio today, but he sends his love. We say hello to you and we welcome you from the Omar Oliver Studios. With me, of course, always is my producer, Don Pardo. And I will say, so Mr. Producer, here's the feedback that I get. Everybody's very kind, of course, other than my wife. She can just throw me under the bus. She says I do a very poor job of making eye contact because, the camera's up here. So she thinks that I need to do a little bit better with that. So that I'm working on today is making better eye contact with the camera because I asked my loving wife, I said, I want your real feedback. And by George, she gave it to me. So that was her. Woody at Spa Day today, so he will be out of studio. So today is, and I probably didn't even realize it this morning, but my daughter reminded me on the way to school, it's actually Halloween. And so this is a big day for lots of kids. Now, I don't know how your Halloween growing up, but I think kids today, I think they have it way too easy. If you are not stuck in a plastic mask that is about a quarter of an inch away from your face in which you cannot breathe in, I don't believe that you've experienced Halloween. And so I grew up over on Bevel Street, and I also did not realize like how the other half lived. Over on Bevel Street, you would go trick-or-treating, go door to door, go see your neighbors. You would get some butterscotch, sometimes loosely wrapped, a little questionable, some just random candy corn floating in your bag, maybe loose change out of an ashtray. That was kind of stuff when you went trick-or-treating over on old Bevel Street, not to be confused with Beville Street. Trust me, this was Bevel Street. And but not too many years ago, this is kind of interesting. But we moved to the country club, lived there, and we rented there for, I don't know, maybe 9 months to a year or something like that. And people, when, they look at the country clubs, beautiful, beautiful homes, the best neighbors, best people, people even ask about, are the HOA fees reasonable at the country club? And they are, they're actually very, very reasonable. But here, the singular reason I could not afford to live at the country club is those cats come out with whole candy bars. I'm not talking about like the mini Twixes, whole candy bars. So we had our little trick-or-treating station set up at the country club, and the kids would come up with barrels of whole candy bars, and we were handing out little mini Twixes. And so we had to raise our game at the country club. But trick-or-treating has changed, quite a bit too, because the other thing is you'll have like 17-year-old kids come up to your house trick-or-treating, and I might be old school, but they're getting nothing from this guy. So past about the age of 12 or 13, not getting a lot of love from me on trick or treat. Growing up, we didn't have golf carts, hay rides. You just hoofed it in a mask that you would literally suffocate in. I think I was the Incredible Hulk. As a kid, I was a little bit too chunky to play the role of the Incredible Hulk, but that's what was my go-to year after year. A couple of things, although Woodrow is not in studio today, a couple signing events that he has where he's doing his autographs like always around town, and these will all be Black Friday events. Black Friday, he will be at Hatcher Point Mall at World Hi-Fi from 10 to 2, and then he will be at Ballantyne's from 3 to 4, and then that Saturday following Black Friday, he will be at Lee's Fried Chicken on Memorial Drive. Lee's Fried Chicken on Memorial Drive from 11 to 1. Also excited, this coming up weekend, Woody will be the Grand Marshal of the Hayhira Pickleball Parade of Champions. They've invited him to do that, and we thank our friends in Hayhira for having Woody to be a part of such a prestigious event. This is one of my cues as well that I don't do particularly well on. So, Mr. Producer, I'm looking at you. I'm going to my sponsorship today. And my sponsorship, is it right here? Is that?
You're close. A little bit
further down?
A little bit further down.
Further down over here?
There you go.
All right, so our sponsor today, this is like Vanna White had it a lot more difficult than I ever imagined. Our sponsor today is Crossway Realty, and we thank Crossway Realties, but specifically we had a realtor of theirs reach out and wanted to sponsor the show, and we do have his picture. So, Mr. Producer, help me when I get this close to right.
Pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty good. I don't know about the picture, but we can tell what it is.
Okay. So I'm not familiar with this realtor. I do not know him, but it's some guy. It's Clay Thomas, co-owner and realtor of Crossway Realty. And so they just gave us some of the quotes from his Zillow profile to read to you today. And we thank you once again. It's Clay Thomas. And so here's some of the quotes from Zillow about Clay Thomas as a realtor. Number one is straight from Zillow, mind you. Number one, devilishly handsome. Number one, this is just an exchange between husband and wife where it says, I asked my husband, is that Brad Pitt? Then I said, oh my gosh, Brad Pitt is our realtor. Once again, straight from Zillow. And then number three, he's the unicorn of all realtors. He's the unicorn of all realtors. So once again, not familiar with Clay Thomas, but seems like an incredible guy. So just look him up for the services. Now we turn our attention to what's an important week in college football as we look at the big Georgia-Florida game that is coming up. I actually heard a Waycross citizen the other day refer to it as the Florida-Georgia game. And we immediately renounced their citizenship and kicked them out of the town because it's always the Georgia-Florida game. I think Georgia is technically the away team this year, but that makes no difference. It will always be the Georgia-Florida game. But just want to, in that kind of spirit, say I'm going to go ahead and give you I don't think either one of those teams are top four teams. I don't think they'll be in the playoff, but I do think Georgia wins this game by the 3 to 5 point kind of margin. And I think the big difference maker is Georgia has really struggled with their wide receivers, and of course Kirby says all the things that he's supposed to, that those guys are doing what they're supposed to do, and that they're blocking physically. And I do think they block particularly well, at least at times they do. Even at the Kentucky game, at times they block well. But at the end of the day, we cannot get separation. And this isn't flag football. We just go out and run any route that you want to. Florida is particularly gifted in their defensive backfield at making you not run the routes that you would like, keeping you from running the routes that you want to run. But I think Lawrence Cager coming back makes a big difference, and I think Georgia wins this in a close one. And those are two teams that are, kind of the 6 to 9 kind of range in the country. I don't see them as top four teams. Georgia has the talent to be a top four team, but right now they're just not able to put it all together because of the weakness at receiver. So let's go to the Clay Thomas football poll if you can. I think I missed last week. I'm a professed Fairweather fan, and so when Georgia lost to South Carolina, some of my me keeping up with college football kind of went to the wayside. But here we go. I'm going to start down at number 10. Mr. Producer, it doesn't make any difference which way I go for you, does it? You're fine with starting at 10?
No, you're good.
Okay, all right. So at number 10, well, you know what? Let me do this. I'm going to give you a bonus one. I don't know that it's going to be up on the screen today, and it shouldn't be. But going to go ahead and put at number 11, Central Florida, because Central Florida just sent out a memo that they have self-declared themselves to be the number 11 team in the nation. And as we all know, we cannot argue with the logic that is Central Florida. Go Knights. Number 10 is the Oklahoma Sooners, good, solid football team, and they had a slip up at Kansas State, but their biggest problem is they still continue to play Big 12 defense. At the end of the day, they have a Big 12 defense, and if you want to see another great example of a Big 12 defense, just go look at Texas and Oklahoma's defense will not allow them to be real contenders. Number 9, just because I think they need a little love and a little attention. I don't really think they're the number 9 team in the country, but is the Minnesota Gophers. And if you want to put in Baylor there, you want to put in SMU, any of those Cinderella stories at number 9, I think that's fine to do so. At number 8, I got the University of Georgia Bulldogs. And number 7, I got Florida, just a 7-8 matchup. Those could be it really doesn't matter. After this weekend, we'll know which one gets to climb the charts. At number 6, it hurts my heart to say this because of their uniforms, but the Oregon Ducks, I have them at number 6. They really only have one loss, and I think it's to a very solid Auburn football team, and that game really could have gone either way. So that one loss does not seem to sting as much as, for example, a Georgia loss to South Carolina at home. Number 5, is the Clemson Tigers. Once again, we covered that game at the last Clay and Woodrow Show as they went in and played a newly established team at Baptist Village, the Tortoises, and we now know the results of that game. Clemson won by a little bit more of a solid margin than I thought. They came into Clough Stipe Field, and they did win by a 14-point, 2-touchdown margin. So we put Clemson at number 5. Clemson coming in at number 5. And, of course, they come the Wakeona Hornets go to travel to Death Valley to face them this coming week. So, once again, that strength of schedule continues to be the problem with Clemson. But the good thing with Clemson is they don't have to win. Really, they're not in a position where they have to win to get in. They just have to have other teams to lose, and those other teams are naturally going to lose. Penn State's going to play Ohio State. Alabama's going to play LSU. So they'll just keep playing their schedule, and they'll sneak into one of those positions. So at Clemson Tigers fans, you're just fine. At number 4, I have Alabama. I'll be honest, under the same argument, you could easily put Alabama at number 5 just due to strength of schedule, but I fear Alabama fans, and they're the most irrational fan base that I'm aware of. So I fear them, and I have hydrangeas at my house, and I'm afraid Harvey Updike will come poison my hydrangeas if I put them at 5. So I'm going to put Alabama at number 4, and then Penn State, to me, the surprise team of the year, I have them at number 3. They actually have a SEC-type defense. I think all of that's about to come to an end because they'll soon face our number 2 team that we have on the Clay Thomas football poll, that being the Ohio State Buckeyes. And at the end of the day, Ohio State legitimately has 3 players that are being mentioned for Heisman. And the player of those 3 that is mentioned the least is actually the best player in college football, and that is Chase Young. It is remarkable that a weak side defensive end is legitimately being mentioned as a potential Heisman candidate. And so Chase Young, to me, the best player in football, but not too far behind is some old guy named Joe Burrows at the number 1 ranked LSU Tigers. Once again, LSU not this weekend, but next weekend has to, and I'm pretty sure they go to Alabama to face the Crimson Tide, and that showdown will occur. And I'll have more thoughts on that next week. And, of course, I think Sean Smoke will be joining me next week because the old fella stood me up this morning, but for good reason. We love the smokester. But Sean will be with us next week. He had a conflict that he could not make it this morning, so we appreciate Sean will be back with us next week. Or it could be one of those things like David Letterman. He always had this guest that he wanted, and he would announce him, and the guy would never show up. Sean Smoke might be that for us. And so, but I do think Sean will be back in the studio with us next week. So that kind of wraps up the week of college football. I hope we have a good time this weekend with the Georgia-Florida weekend that looms ahead. Once again, I see Georgia still being a 3-point Georgia at the end of the day has 14 5-star players, and Florida has 1. And I think the one that they have happens to be a Georgia player that transferred over. And that may not be true. They may have 1 5-star in addition to that. Georgia has more talent. So at the end of the day, that does it speaks volumes of what Dan Mullen is doing. Personally, not a big Dan Mullen fan and the way what he says during his press conferences, but as far as what he does with talent on the field, you got to tip your hat to Dan Mullen and what he's doing at Florida. So that's going to kind of wrap up our football talk because Mr. Producer did point out to me we actually have more female followers and viewers right now, I think, than male, and so we can't spend all of our time talking about football, nor is this the Clay and Woodrow Show designed to do that. But the week of Georgia-Florida, you've got to spend a little time talking about college football. So one of the things that we've added to our segments is just a basic question that comes from the audience that our producer is aware of, that I am not aware of, that maybe a particular audience member might ask of me to respond to, and just to give a little bit of insight or maybe advice, some worldly advice on. So I'm going to turn it over to the producer to see what's this kind of question of the week that a listener is seeking. What you got?
Okay, what are the top 10 ways that you annoy your wife?
Top 10 ways that I annoy my wife. Well, first of all, I think the question is faulty because it assumes that there would be more than 5 or 6 things that I do to annoy my wife. And I can assure you that that is not the case. It's a small number, and I hope that she does not listen to this recording. But I'll try to go with 5. Let's see. Okay, so in our bedroom, she has a fancy quilt rack, and she's got some quilts from her grandmother, I believe from my grandmother, and they're quilts that have sentimental value, but we don't use them. They're for decoration. But that quilt rack also is a handy place for me to hang my dress pants, and just repeatedly keep hanging my dress pants over, because walking the 5 additional steps to our closet to hang up my pants, of course, would be unheard of. And so that drives her absolutely batty. Number 2, and I've learned this now as a guy that's been married for over 20 years, is apparently if you have a shower curtain and you open it and you close it, if you leave it in the closed state and not in the open state, apparently that closed state, it collects more mildew. And so she reminds me almost on a daily basis that it would be very kind of me to open back up the shower curtain once I'm done. Number 3, and men, look right in here. Look in these baby blues when I tell you this. I'm not good at this, but I'm doing much, much better. But one of the things that, we all need to vent from time to time. Our spouse is the natural person that we would vent to. When she begins to vent or kind of share her heart with me, or a problem that she has, about midway through her venting, I have found a solution to her problem, and I interrupt her to tell her how to handle her problem. And I'm a lot better about that. But don't do that. That's not really what they're looking for. They just need a listening ear. And so I catch myself now, instead of saying, like, I'll stop her and then give her like a diagram of how she can solve her problem, just be a listening ear. But that used to drive her absolutely bananas, which seems like a reasonable thing to be upset about. That's my fault. My apologies, Brooke. Then let's see. Number 4 might be, I can give you a good one. And my daughter would tell you the same thing, is they like Hallmark movies. For the life of me, I have no idea why, but they love Hallmark movies. I'm not talking about just Christmas. I'm talking about year-round, that Hallmark stuff. And they invite me to watch them, and sometimes I oblige. But because I already know the plot, and by the way, everybody that's watching a Hallmark movie already knows the plot, I begin to make fun of the fact that I already know what the plot is. And I was like, oh, no, look at this. This is a handsome guy in town, but he kind of rubs people the wrong way, and he's dating this girl, but ultimately this girl needs to find the shy, bashful guy in town. She's going to fall in love with him instead of the rich, snobby guy. And you already know, and so I do that, and then they ask me to leave. They ask me to leave the room. So that I'm not good in Hallmark movies, but they are pretty predictable. And then on top of that, here's one, number 5. Mr. Producer, this is number 5, isn't it? I might have more than I think. I know you find that hard to believe.
I do find that hard to believe. I think we're at number 5.
Okay, we're number 5. I'm very much so anti-sleeping in. It drives me bonkers. I mean, I'm not saying you got to wake up at 5:30 every morning, but my wife is a big fan of maybe on Saturday, just sleeping it on in till 9 o'clock or something, and that I can't do that. So she does not. Apparently, I'm pretty noisy when I get up. Now, I know this is about me, not her. Needless to say that when she gets up to get ready in the school, that she operates a hair blow dryer and a jackhammer in our bedroom, 5 days a week. I don't say a word about that. But as I gently put on my socks on Saturday mornings at 7:30, she will lose it on me because she wants to sleep in, and I'm not a big fan of sleeping in. And I'm going to give you a bonus one, and this would probably be at the top of their list. But I find ghost tours to be silly, and I won't participate in a ghost tour. And my wife is a big fan of a ghost tour. And, of course, opposites attract, and we're opposite about everything in life. And so I won't go do a ghost tour with her. So that would be that's a bonus one. Instead of 5, I'll give you 6. But no ghost tours. I find the idea of someone walking. So I went on one with her. Okay, so here's the story, and this is true. The lady said as we went through a ghost tour, it was in Savannah. So we go up to this mansion, and she goes, "You see this beautiful mansion? You would think it would be $2, $3, even maybe $4 million. It is not. It is on sale for $200,000 because this house is known to be haunted." Well, I've got my phone in my hand, so I look up the address on Zillow while the ghost tour is going on, and I announce to the crowd that actually it's not $200,000, that it's $1.8 million. And so even my kids asked me to please no longer participate, and that ghost tours were really not something where the lady was looking for my feedback. So not a big fan of the ghost tour whatsoever, and my wife enjoys them. So that would cap things. And now that I think of it, I just thought of another one, but I'm going to stop right here because I might have more of these than I realize. So listen, Clay and Woodrow Show, about to sign out here. Once again from the Omar Oliver studio. Sorry that we missed Sean Smoke this week. We'll see Sean Smoke next week. I actually have a Athens college band kind of tour questionnaire kind of thing that I want to give him. A couple of quiz questions also for Sean for next week. I've got those prepared. And so we're signing out. Hope you have a good Georgia-Florida weekend. And here's to all of you guys to make sure that you have a fantastic week, and go Dogs.